I was 15 when my dad introduced me to her. Monica. That name still makes my stomach turn. She walked into our lives like she was already royalty, like we were all just lucky to orbit around her. She was beautiful, in that overly polished, salon blonde, perfectly tanned kind of way. Everything about her screamed control. From the way she placed her purse on the table like it deserved its own chair, to the way she looked at my dad, like he was some trophy she had finally collected after years of playing the game. Back then, I was still raw from my parents' divorce. My mom had moved away, chasing some fresh start in another state. We weren't close anymore. My dad did his best to hold everything together, but when he met Monica, everything shifted. Suddenly, he wasn't home as much. Our Friday movie nights disappeared. The house started to look like a catalog, cold, pristine, soulless. Just like her. She tried to win me over at first, bought me expensive shoes I didn't ask for, took me shopping for clothes I never wore, called me sweetheart with this fake smile that never touched her eyes. But it didn't take long before the real Monica showed up. "You should eat a little less pasta," she said one night while scooping dinner onto my plate. "You don't want to get bulky like your mother." That was the first time I truly hated her, and it only got worse. By the time I turned 17, she and my dad were engaged. She flaunted that ring like it was a crown. Her voice got sharper, her tolerance thinner. She started criticizing everything, the way I dressed, the music I listened to, even the way I poured cereal. "You're just like your mother," she'd say with a scoff. No drive, no ambition, always acting like a victim. I kept my mouth shut. My dad was so in love with her, blind to every dig, every insult. He used to be so attentive, so involved. But now, he just nodded along while she slowly erased me from his life. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I was home from school early, pretending to study at the kitchen table, when I heard the front door open. Monica's heels clacked across the tile. I thought she was alone, until I heard the voice. A man's voice. Deep, confident, familiar in a way that made my blood freeze. "No one's home?" he asked. "Nope," she whispered. "He's still at work, and the kid's probably off sulking somewhere." I crept closer, peeking through the hallway just in time to see her pull him in by the collar and kiss him. Hard. And not just any kiss. This was hungry, desperate. It took me a second to recognize him. Logan, my dad's best friend, his groomsman, the guy who was helping plan their wedding. I felt sick. I backed away slowly, heart thudding so loud I thought they'd hear it. I ran to my room, shut the door, and sat in silence, trying to process what I'd just seen. Monica, my future stepmom, was cheating on my dad. And not just with anyone, with his best friend. I wanted to tell him right then, but I knew he wouldn't believe me. Monica had spent years painting me as emotional, unstable, dramatic. If I came at her with an accusation and no proof, she'd spin it like she always did, and he'd take her side. So I waited. I started keeping tabs, listening in, taking pictures, screenshots, messages I found when she left her phone on the counter unlocked. At first it felt invasive, wrong even, but then I remembered every time. She rolled her eyes at me every time she told me I wasn't good enough, every time she made my dad question me instead of her. By the time the wedding rolled around, I had everything I needed. I sat through the rehearsal dinner, pretending everything was fine, smiled through clenched teeth, watched Logan give a toast, while Monica beamed like the perfect fiancé. No one else saw it. The subtle way her hand brushed his under the table, the way his eyes lingered too long on her dress. I barely slept that night. The next day, the ceremony was set in this massive vineyard, all white roses and glass chandeliers hanging from trees. Monica looked like something out of a bridal magazine. My dad stood at the altar like a man who had no idea he was about to walk off a cliff. I had one shot. I waited until the vows, right as the officiant asked if anyone had a reason why these two shouldn't be married. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "Actually, I do." The gasps were instant. A few people laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. "It's not a joke," I said. Monica's been cheating on my dad with Logan. Silence. Monica's face went pale. Logan stood frozen. My dad blinked like he'd just been slapped. I have proof, I said, pulling out my phone. Texts, photos, videos. I didn't want to do this here, but I knew you wouldn't believe me any other way. Monica rushed toward me, her voice shrill. You manipulative little liar! Don't, I snapped, not this time. I walked up the aisle and handed my dad the phone. He scrolled. His face changed with every swipe. From confusion to disbelief to heartbreak. The wedding was cancelled on the spot. Guests left in a wave of whispers and judgment. Monica screamed, swore, tried to spin the story, but it was too late. Logan slinked off, avoiding every eye. My dad just stood there, staring into nothing. I'd shattered everything, exposed every lie, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not victory, just a quiet, heavy release. The truth was out, but the real fallout had just begun. The ride home was silent. My dad didn't say a word. His hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. His tux jacket lay crumpled in the back seat. Monica's bouquet was still on the dashboard, abandoned. Everything about that drive felt surreal, like we were floating through the aftermath of something neither of us fully understood yet. I wanted to speak, to say anything, but I didn't know if I was the villain or the hero in his eyes. He hadn't looked at me since we left the vineyard. He hadn't looked at anyone. When we pulled into the driveway, he just sat there. I waited, hoping he'd break the silence. Finally, he said, I loved her. His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard before. I know, I whispered. He turned to me then, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. You were right. And I'm sorry for every time I made you feel like you weren't. I didn't expect that. For the first time in years, it felt like I had my dad back. We didn't talk much that night. He poured himself a drink, something he rarely did, and sat in the living room for hours, staring at nothing. I went to bed, exhausted but too wired to sleep. My phone buzzed constantly. Friends, family members, people who had been at the wedding and now had front row seats to the drama. Some were on my side, some weren't. But the message that hit me hardest came around midnight. You think you've won? You've ruined everything. I will never forgive you. Monica, I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. There was no apology, no denial, just venom. Like I had betrayed her, like she was the victim in all this. I didn't respond. I just blocked her. The next few days were a blur. My dad took time off work. He cancelled the honeymoon trip. The house was quiet, heavy, like it was mourning something. People dropped by to check in, really just to feed on the gossip. I heard one of Monica's friends on the phone saying I had staged the whole thing to get attention, that I was jealous of her. It stung, not because I cared what they thought, but because I knew Monica was still spinning her web, even after everything, and she wasn't done. A week later, I came home from school and found my dad on the phone, shouting, "What the hell do you mean she's suing for emotional distress?" He slammed the phone down. His face was a mix of fury and disbelief. "She's trying to take me to court," he said, pacing the room, "claiming you humiliated her publicly and caused her psychological damage." I blinked. "She's serious?" "She's Monica," he muttered. "Of course she's serious." Apparently, she was also demanding compensation for the wedding expenses, the venue, the catering, the dress, claiming the public spectacle destroyed her reputation and cost her future. Business opportunities. I couldn't believe it. She cheated. She lied. And now she wanted money. My dad got a lawyer. It became ugly fast. Monica's side leaked bits of the story to local blogs and Facebook pages, twisting it into some warped version where I was a vindictive stepdaughter who hated her from day one, that I'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy. But we had the receipts, the photos, the videos, the texts. Still, people love a scandal more than they love the truth. At school, I became that girl. Whispers followed me down the halls. Some people were supportive. Most weren't. There were rumors, lies. even a few edited screenshots floating around to make it look like I'd blackmailed Monica before the wedding. The drama fed itself like wildfire, and Monica, she wasn't hiding. She went on with her life like nothing had happened. Still posting flawless selfies, still going to yoga, still pretending she was some life coach or influencer or whatever image she'd built for herself. Logan, on the other hand, had vanished. He didn't return calls, deleted social media. I heard through the grapevine he'd moved out of town. My dad started going to therapy. He didn't say it directly, but I knew he blamed himself for not seeing it sooner, for letting her in, for not protecting me better. "You saved me," he said one night, sitting on the back porch. I didn't even realize how far I'd drifted. I shrugged, unsure what to say. "I just told the truth." "Yeah," he nodded, "but telling the truth doesn't always come easy, especially when it burns everything down." He was right. The fallout had scorched everything. Our reputation, our peace, our family ties. My grandma refused to talk to me for weeks, angry that I'd disgraced my father's wedding day. Some cousins blocked me on social media. It was like I'd committed the sin, not Monica, but beneath it all, I knew I'd done the right thing. And then one day, something unexpected happened. I received a message from someone I didn't know. A girl, maybe in her early 20s. Her profile was private, but her message was simple. "I saw what you did. Monica did the same thing." To my dad, "She's a serial manipulator. You're not the first. Just, thank you." I stared at the screen for a long time. It was like someone had handed me a piece of the puzzle I didn't even know was missing. Monica had a pattern. I dug deeper, quietly, carefully. I started reaching out to people from her past, old coworkers, even a few ex-friends she'd mentioned in passing. The stories I heard, chilling. This woman had been ruining lives long before she met my father, and suddenly I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to stop her from hurting us, I was going to make sure she never did it again. I didn't go looking for revenge. Not at first. I wasn't some mastermind, plotting Monica's downfall in a dark room with red string pinned to a wall. But once I opened the door, once that first girl messaged me and told me her father had been one of Monica's victims, it was like a dam broke. The next week another message came, then another. Women, siblings, even a man. Each one had a story, and every story had one common denominator, Monica. In every case, she had entered someone's life like a savior and left it in pieces. She had seduced bosses, alienated children, tanked marriages, always came out clean, always moved on to the next, like a parasite in designer heels. It hit me all at once. Monica wasn't just cruel, she was dangerous. She knew how to spot insecurity, how to weaponize affection, how to gaslight, manipulate, deflect. She didn't love people, she used them. And it wasn't an accident, yet it was a system. I started documenting what I could, not for revenge exactly, but for insurance. Each message I received became another data point. Each person I spoke to helped me build a timeline. Where she'd worked, who she'd dated, where the patterns repeated. It was all there, in plain sight, if you looked hard enough. But I knew none of that would matter unless I found a way to make it public. Undeniable. She wasn't going to fade into the background. No. Monica had doubled down on her influencer persona. After the wedding disaster, she rebranded. Started calling herself a relationship coach, of all things. I'm not joking. She literally used the tagline, helping women take back their power and live their truth. She started making TikToks, podcasts, selling courses. She was monetizing her lies, and people were buying it. I watched a video of her once where she said, "Sometimes toxic energy comes from jealous children who haven't healed from their trauma." She was talking about me. She never said my name. But I felt the dagger anyway. That was the final straw. I reached out to one of the women who'd messaged me, a woman named Clara. Her father had been engaged to Monica 6 years ago. She said Monica vanished one day with nearly $15,000 he'd lent her for a fake business idea. No one had believed Clara when she tried to warn him. He ended up bankrupt and alone. I told Clara everything. She told me more. We exchanged screenshots, stories, voice notes. We decided to compile it all into a document, a single, detailed expose of who Monica really was. And then I went further. I created a burner account. No name, no face, just facts. I uploaded the story on Reddit, under TrueOffMyChest, where I knew it would catch fire. I titled it simply, "My stepmom is a fraud, and I'm done staying quiet." Within 24 hours, it had 20,000 upvotes. The comments were brutal and validating. People who had followed Monica online came forward. "Wait, I've seen this woman on TikTok. Is this the same person who said men over 40 are emotionally disposable? She tried to sell me a $900 relationship webinar. It went viral. Other creators picked it up. Reddit YouTubers made videos about it. TikTokers dug through her content, pointing out contradictions, inconsistencies. One even showed side-by-side videos of her giving completely opposite advice depending on who she was targeting. Her follower count started to drop. Brands she had partnered with began quietly removing her posts. She posted a tearful Instagram video a week later. "There are people out there who want to destroy successful women," she sniffled. "I have never cheated, lied, or stolen. These are baseless attacks from internet trolls." But her eyes weren't wet. Her voice cracked in the wrong places. Even that felt rehearsed. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't have to. The internet had its own momentum now, and just when I thought it might finally quiet down, something else happened. My dad called me into the living room. He was holding an envelope. "She sent this," he said. Inside was a letter, handwritten, 4 pages. It started with, "You destroyed me." Then it went on to blame me for her mental collapse, for the bullying she claimed to be experiencing, and for the abuse she said she endured at our hands. She accused me of defamation, threatened legal action, claimed she was considering a restraining order. My dad read it, then tossed it into the fireplace without a word. He looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you." That was the first time he'd said that in years. I should have felt victorious, but instead I felt numb. Exposing Monica hadn't fixed the past. It hadn't erased the years of manipulation, the tension, the way I had questioned myself every time she cut me down. She was still out there, spinning stories, clinging to whatever scraps of reputation she could salvage. But the difference now was, people knew, people were watching, and for once, I was the one holding the truth. The fire crackled softly as the last corner of Monica's letter curled into ash. I didn't move. I watched it burn like it was the final piece of something ugly I'd carried for years. My dad stood beside me, silent. For once we didn't need words. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open, heart buzzing with everything that had happened. It felt like I'd lived 5 years in the span of a month. What began as a personal betrayal had turned into a public storm, and now, standing in the wreckage of Monica's carefully constructed facade, I wasn't sure what came next. She went dark after the letter, no more Instagram lives, no TikToks. Her website disappeared. Her coaching business dissolved practically overnight. The last time anyone saw her publicly was at a wellness retreat, where she reportedly got into a screaming match with the host and stormed out halfway through. Poetic, really, but even as her influence crumbled, the ripples of her damage remained. Clara, the woman who'd helped me bring the truth to light, messaged me again. Her dad had recently passed away. He never recovered financially or emotionally after Monica ghosted him. Clara said he'd left behind a journal, pages filled with guilt and confusion about how he'd been fooled. He never blamed her for trying to warn him. He blamed himself for not listening. "He would have been proud of what you did," she told me. That message stuck with me. I kept thinking about all the people who never got closure. People who were still questioning whether what they went through was real, whether the manipulation had been their fault, whether the villain was them. And I realized that's where Monica's true power had always lived, in silence. She thrived in shadows, in gaslighting, in doubt. And when I shattered that silence at her wedding, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about ending a cycle. I didn't post again on Reddit. I didn't make follow-up videos or jump on the viral wave. I'd done what I needed to do. But that didn't mean I stopped caring, so I decided to turn the story into something more. I started writing. Not like a diary. I'd done that already. This was different. I wrote about toxic relationships, about emotional manipulation, about what it feels like when someone walks into your life and convinces you you're the broken one. I didn't use names. I didn't need to. And to my surprise, people read it. They shared it. They reached out. I thought I was crazy until I read this. I'm 35, and your story is mine with different faces. I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. The words flowed from them like they'd been waiting years for someone to open the floodgates. I wasn't a therapist. I wasn't a guru. I was just a girl who got tired of pretending everything was okay. And now, for the first time in my life, people were listening. As for my dad, he changed too. He sold the house he'd bought with Monica. Too many memories, too many ghosts. He moved into a smaller place, started going to group therapy. He even joined a local hiking club, something I never imagined him doing. The man who once defended Monica blindly now taught others how to spot emotional red flags. We weren't perfect. We still had our silences, our awkward dinners, our moments of distance. But there was honesty now. No more pretending. No more walking on eggshells. One day, months later, we were having coffee when he looked up from his mug and said, "She was never your mother." I raised an eyebrow. "No kidding." He shook his head, smiled faintly. "No, I mean, she tried to replace your mother, and I let her, but you never lost yourself in her. You held on. That's strength." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. In a weird way, Monica gave me something she never meant to, a mirror. She showed me what power looked like when it was twisted, and because of that, I learned what mine could look like when it was real. Sometimes I still get messages, people asking what happened next, whether Monica ever apologized, whether she ever changed. The truth? She didn't. The last I heard, she moved out of state, started using a new last name, probably weaving another web somewhere. People like her don't vanish, they just find new audiences. But now, those audiences have warning signs. They have our stories. They have truth. And me, I have peace. Not the kind that comes from pretending everything's okay. The kind that comes from knowing I faced the worst and didn't let it break me. I used to think exposing Monica was the most dramatic, outrageous thing I'd ever do. But really, it was just the beginning. The real story was what happened after, how I learned to trust myself again. And I hope someone out there reads this or hears it or watches it in a video someday and realizes they're not crazy, they're not broken, and they're not alone, because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they wear white dresses and smile at you across the aisle, telling you that you'll never be good enough. But sometimes you prove them wrong in front of everyone. And that's the real ending.